Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Note to File podcast, a collection of interviews, best practices, and candid commentary for clinical research sites. Today, our guest is Mone Brown. She is a super passionate clinical research professional. She's held roles everywhere from regulatory affairs document specialist to clinical research coordinator, as well as project manager. She also holds a master's degree in regulatory science. In this episode, we discuss the jump from CRC to CRA, the delicate balance between quantity and quality, the value of diversifying your experience, and the challenges of job hunting during a pandemic. So without further ado, Mone Brown. All right, Mone, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing on this Wednesday? Is today Wednesday? Today's Thursday, isn't it?
Correct. Today's Thursday. And I am doing well. Despite everything that's going on, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's been a crazy time, and it seems like everybody's dealing with it very differently all across the country and all across different sites. Some sites have stayed open, some have shut down, some people have been furloughed. It kind of seems to run the whole spectrum, doesn't it?
Of course, it's very trying times, but we'll make it through, and everything will come back and be great.
Absolutely. I'm always curious. I always like to start out by kind of asking people how they got into clinical research. It's always just a particular interest of mine. I've said it again, and I'll probably say it a million more times, but most people don't set out to be clinical research coordinators. So tell us a little bit about your story and kind of how you fell into clinical research.
It's pretty interesting. I really fell into clinical research before I fell into clinical research. I went to school for medical assisting, and I had I said that I was going to be working in a clinic just with patients, and no clinical research was going to be involved at all. It wasn't the area that I was actually guided into. And when I was doing my externship, I was presented to a company called Bowling Clinical Trials, and that's how I fell into research. So I ended up doing my externship there, and after my externship, they liked me and wanted to hire me on. And so I became their research assistant, and they did mainly osteoporosis studies and rheumatoid arthritis studies. And however, the office closed down due to the PI passing away tragically. And I kept going on and got my degree in health science and ended up applying for a job for a pharmaceutical company. Didn't realize that I was still going to be in research. And that's where I kind of just stayed, and research became my niche. And I went on ahead and ended up getting my master's in regulatory science and kept going. So research is something that has become my passion.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of started out very briefly at the site level, but it seems like that was a pretty quick transition. I say quick,
Right.
Obviously you had some school in between there, but you had to, go from the site to the CRO role fairly quickly. And I see a lot of people on a site level who struggle with that option to be able to jump from site to CRO. Do you think that was in large part due to your continued education?
I believe it had a lot to do with my continued education. Of course, I didn't know too much. I mean, I knew some aspects of clinical research, but I did not know as much as I needed to know when I ended up going to the company on the CRO pharmaceutical level. I learned a whole lot more as far as clinical research and the different aspects of things that go along with research. Before then, it was just, like it almost was like doing clinical visits, even though it was considered to be research. But when you go on the CRO pharmaceutical side, you see a whole different level of clinical research from beginning to end, because you're dealing with the IRB, you're dealing with with the site as well, but you're mainly dealing with the IRB, the FDA, how drugs are being made. You're dealing with validations, all of those aspects that go along with it. So you get a whole different perspective when you're on the pharmaceutical CRO side versus at the site level.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of it, I think, is that there's such a broad spectrum of things you can do that, wherever your interest lies, there's something there for you. It's just
Correct.
There's so many opportunities. So where do you feel, what appealed most to you across those roles? Is there a, particular area that you like the most, or that you think that your particular strength is in?
Of course, my strength is in regulatory affairs, and because I was able to start the study and deal with the IRB and dealing with the regulatory documents, also seeing it from a monitoring side and seeing the different aspects as far as regulatory affairs goes, and also seeing how to place the guidelines in that goes with doing informed consents, writing up SOPs, all the different FDA, dealing with the FDA and the different levels that goes along with regulatory affairs and different laws that go along with it, and seeing it, you know, everything changes so rapidly in research. You never ever have one of those moments where everything's just going to always be the same. Things are constantly changing on different levels as far as different laws change with research. So there's constantly things that are changing that you have to stay on top of, especially when you're dealing with different laws that have to do FDA regulations and stuff like that. So you have to stay on top of those things. So regulatory affairs came into play, and it helped me with that aspect as far as staying on top of the different laws that go along with the FDA regulations.
Sure, sure. And how do you think, or does that sort of trickle down to sites? So as far as being on a regulatory affairs side of a CRO, what kind of relationship do you have with sites? And do you think that your experience too, being a coordinator in the past, had sort of helped you better understand how that relationship works?
It definitely did, because you were able to take your knowledge to the site level, especially when I was when I was a coordinator, and I was able to take that knowledge and bring it to them, because a lot of them didn't have the knowledge that I had as far as regulatory affairs and different laws that go along with the FDA regulations. So I was able to bring that knowledge in and kind of guide them as well. So I had that. I guess you could say, that upper hand, and it helping them as well, and understanding different aspects as far as regulatory goes as well. So it kind of helped me in the knowledge that I did have, bringing it from the CRO side and bringing it also to the site level, so that they had more understanding as well.
Yeah, and I think it's again a very underrated aspect, because there does seem to be a big disconnect sometimes between sponsors, CROs, and sites. We don't see the world of research from the same perspective. It's very different. So, the site level doesn't know what the CRO level knows, while the CRO level doesn't know what the site level knows. So
Right.
you oftentimes get into a lot of, different ways of looking at things, and sometimes disagreements, just because there's not always a lot of crossover. So I think that's a very valuable way, to sort of get in, and it's a great way for you to, be able to give some unique perspective, having worked both at a site level and a CRO level.
Correct, and I'm very grateful that I've had those two aspect levels as far as clinical research goes, because it's always the beginning of trying to help someone else gain knowledge just as well, because you can bring your knowledge into any different situation, and so you can help them to understand and grasp things a whole lot better, and to have a new perspective. And when you're bringing in knowledge, they can bring knowledge to you just as well as you can bring knowledge to them.
Sure. Well, and I know, being at a site level, if I'm having a conversation with somebody from a CRO, I can tell pretty quickly whether or not they've worked at a site level or not,
Right.
and whether or not they can, we have the same level of understanding of how things might work on a higher theoretical level versus a practical level at a site, because those two things don't always jive. It can be a
Right.
trick. So, again, for you to have, both sides of that coin is extremely valuable. And I think that's something, even I've experienced, where, again, I can tell if you've come from a site level, we can speak the same language and understand each other,
Right.
as to where sometimes, the CRO level people their concerns are just not the same as mine are, coming from a site.
Oh, most definitely, because you're trying to get people in and trying to get studies done, and then on the CRO level sponsor side, you're like, well, wait a minute, but you're trying to keep data as clean as possible, but sometimes the site does not always look at that aspect the way that you're looking at it in a different way. So I know that I was able to bring that into light too, that it's always quality over quantity. You could have a million subjects, but if the data is not clean, it doesn't make a difference to how many subjects you do have. So
Yeah,
that
and
are
that
participating
can
in
be
studies.
for sure. And that can be a delicate balance at a site level where you're under pressure to
Hmm.
enroll, and so you've got the competing aspect of CRO side wants the quality. Well, they want both. I mean, they want
Hmm.
quantity and quality, to be perfectly
Yeah.
honest. But it can be real easy for quality to get away from you when you're just pumping through subjects as quickly as you possibly can. So that
Right.
gets messy. So the expectation isn't always match up with what practically happens at a site. So it's important to have good people on a regulatory side to keep things in order and ensure that we're doing what we need to be doing at a site level. So I love that. I love when people have experience from both sides, because I think that shows. I think it helps your site be more successful. So that's something that's should be more sought after and more valued from a CRO side, because again, I think when you have those combinations of people, the sites are just that much more likely to succeed.
Correct. Correct.
So
Most
that's awesome, and
definitely.
also looks like you've had the opportunity to work across a lot of different therapeutic areas throughout that as well.
Yes, I definitely have. I've gone as far as cancer studies, infectious disease, dealing with HIV and hepatitis. I've also dealt a lot with asthma and nephrology, to name the least. And then I've also done phase 1 through 4 studies, but I've also done I've done so many different areas where I'm not just directed just in one area. I have different therapeutic areas that are underneath my belt, but I'm always open to learn new therapeutic areas because there's so many out there, and it's not just one area that you're concentrating on. So I love the aspect of being able to see the different therapeutic areas and to grow in those different areas as well.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. I mean, it's never the same. You're always
No,
learning something different, learning something new, and it really gives you the opportunity to grow. When you develop those, fundamental skills, then you can take those with you across all kinds of projects and all kinds of therapeutic areas. So, again, that's what keeps what we do,
right.
so exciting.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, what are some challenges that you faced, sort of throughout your career? Are there some things that stick out to you that might be indicative of the industry as a whole, or just things that have been personally challenging for you?
As far as me as the challenges go, people don't really recognize everything that I've done as far as research goes. So they try and put me in this box, and I'm not in a box because I have different aspects that I've actually gone through and actually experienced and done. And even though I have a master's in regulatory science, doesn't make it any easier for me because it seems like they see that I've graduated, but when the question is also asked, when did you graduate? And because of the fact that I graduated with my master's in August of 2019, then they think, oh, is this just her beginning of her experience? But it's not, because I started in regulatory affairs way prior to me getting my master's. Me getting my master's was just to open up another door, but it doesn't mean that it gets easier, because it hasn't been, especially when I was laid off, and I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be a whole lot easier because I have this master's in
Right.
regulatory science. And you're thinking, oh, it's going to be little bit easier and the doors are going to open. But it hasn't been easy. And then the pandemic, you have to put that into play. And then you have to put into everything that's going around in the world right now. And it kind of like puts you almost at a disadvantage per se because of
Sure.
everything that's going on.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy time for sure. But I mean, that additional education should really be just another tool in your tool belt, not not used as a way to sort of, judge your past experience. Because again,
Right.
you've got all the background, and I did the same thing. I started out in research. I had no degree at all. So I
Right.
started out as a research assistant at the bottom of the ladder. Uh, I had actually dropped out of college. Back in the day, I got back in, to the back into school, but I started out in research and had to get a degree and then work my way up through the chain. But those are all it's cumulative, right? It's not, you don't start back over just because you stopped and or continued your education. So I can understand
Right.
that can be challenging, especially with CR. I don't know. My experience with CROs is that they're not always the brightest when it comes to picking good talent.
Hmm.
And that's not to speak ill of anyone, but I've seen a lot of people they hire who they may have a great education, but they have no idea what they're doing, as opposed to someone like yourself who's you've been there and done that.
Yeah, and I'm no way, shape, or form I'm not green when it comes to clinical research. I've been doing this for a while. I just went on ahead and tried to expand my destiny as far as getting expanding my education. It had nothing to do with, okay, I hadn't been in this field. I've been in this field for a while. So it was just to make me better and improve what I was doing and to learn a whole lot more. When I didn't stay closed minded and say, this is where I stopped. So I kept going as far
Right.
as educating myself to learn more when it comes to clinical research and regulatory affairs and things on that level. So I didn't
Yeah.
stop. And I still
Yeah.
won't
No.
stop. I'll still continue to keep learning.
Yeah. No. That's no. And I applaud you. And I think ultimately that's going to pay off for you. I mean, this may be a bit of a dark time, but I think that ultimately that's going to really pay off for you in the end. So keep going, please. Keep learning,
Of
keep growing.
course.
Keep adding to your CV, and I think you'll find the right fit. And that's when it'll all click into place for you, I think.
Of course.
So, what are some best practices you've picked up along your career? Is there anything you'd share with the greater clinical trial community that maybe something specifically that has really stuck out for you?
I would say integrity to me is such a big deal when it comes to doing clinical studies and completing studies. Integrity, and as far as getting good quality data, to me is very, 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 very important. Um, to me, I'm one that's very, very detail oriented. I do not like queries. When I was a clinical research coordinator, I cleared the queries out as quickly as they came, and the
Sure.
monitors loved the fact that I was so willing to get these done. So when the monitors came in, the queries had already been answered. So it made the monitoring visits go so much smoother. But I also knew what to expect going in on as far as the monitors were coming in and what they were going to possibly be looking for. And so I made sure that um, the details were there, that the data ended up being good quality, to make sure that the studies were going on were as smooth as possible. So I would say integrity, good quality, and making sure that you're detail oriented within your clinical studies.
Sure. Yep. Nope. That's what it's all about. I mean, that's what makes not just a good coordinator, but a good employee. Period. Especially in this field where those are highly valued traits to have.
Hmm.
I always am the first to admit that I'm not someone who's naturally detail oriented. So I oftentimes envy people like you who can have that level of detail. So again, that'll take you far. So that's a good trait to have and to continue to develop for sure.
Right.
Right. So, what are some other resources that you've come across or that you use? Is there anything specific, even if it's whether it's a process or a book or just any kind of general practice that you like to use to help further your career that are indispensable to you?
As far as myself, try and stay on top. of clinical research as much as possible, because it's so important to stay on top of what is going on in clinical research, because things are always changing. Webinars are very important as well, because you're going to see different aspects and different areas that you may not know per se, or just to continue to educate yourself. And webinars have become very beneficial. I'm also part of the ACRP, which a lot
Sure.
of those that are in clinical research are part of. And so I guess just networking, webinars, and just staying on top of clinical research and making sure that you're always educating yourselves on what changes that are taking place, and what's new, what's out there, so that you stay on top of your game.
Yeah, no, ACRP is definitely a great resource. I think networking, like you mentioned, to me, that's something that I stress to everyone. It seems like, especially on a site level, there's a lot of almost, I don't know how to put it. There's people can be introverted, I guess, maybe is one way to say it, but they're often guarded. So sometimes there's not a lot of networking that goes on across sites. So I always tell people, if you want to learn something, talk to other people in your field, because everyone's doing things differently. Everybody's getting information from different sources. So the more people you have in the network, the easier it is for you to learn. If it's something you don't know, someone in your network probably does. So I think that's, again, a super underrated way to sort of keep on top of things that are going on in the industry. So yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone who might be listening before we start wrapping up?
I would just say that those who have been laid off, don't give up, keep going. Even if you're on the job search and you feel like you're just getting doors shut in your face and it doesn't seem real hopeful, just continue going and never give up. Always educate yourself. Know that someone is out there that you will get noticed, and just keep going.
That's it. I love it. Where can people find you online if they want to reach out?
I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. You can email me at any time at secondchancesmb@gmail.com. And if you go on Facebook or Instagram, it's just my name, Mone Brown. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Very good. I'll put a link to those in our show notes. Those are available at notetofilepodcast.com. Mone, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. And until next time.
You are so welcome, and congrats on your podcast.
Thank you. And as always, thank you for listening. Please make sure to check us out at notetofilepodcast.com for show notes, links to resources, as well as contact information for our guests. If you have a question, comment, or think you have an interesting perspective to share on the show, please reach out. I'm at brad@notetofilepodcast.com. Thanks for listening.